This black man saved an old man from a heart attack. What happened to him next is incredible. It was an ordinary day in the town of Saint-Jean, a quiet little town with cobbled streets, where everything seemed frozen in a calm routine. The inhabitants of this city seemed to live in a timeless bubble, as if each moment was suspended. The houses, often white, with wooden shutters and well-kept gardens, were lined up along the narrow streets, forming a picturesque setting that the inhabitants appreciated. People greeted each other on street corners, exchanging smiles and news, and outdoor cafes were crowded with customers soaking up the rays of the afternoon sun. Children's laughter echoed in the air, bringing a special sweetness to the summer heat. The small shops in the city center, with their colorful signs and neat windows, were bustling with passers-by who stopped to chat or choose fresh products from the market. The city seemed frozen in a moment of peace, where nothing disturbed the harmony of the scene. But for André, a 32-year-old black man, this day would change his life forever. André lived in this same city, although he was not born there. Originally from a more working-class neighborhood on the outskirts, he had moved to Saint-Jean a few years earlier, hoping to find a calmer life, far from the difficulties he had faced during his childhood. He was a delivery driver for a small local consumer goods company, which allowed him to travel through the city's residential neighborhoods every day. Every morning at dawn, he would hop on his bicycle, a simple but sturdy model, and set off to deliver packages through the cobbled streets of the city. Although he did not have a great fortune, André had a dignity that was not for sale. He was a hard worker, proud of his daily efforts and the small victories his routine gave him. His strength of character and work ethic had earned him the respect of those who knew him. He was not seen as a hero, but rather as a calm and reliable man, someone who did his job without seeking attention. That day, as he drove down a street lined with old houses and tall trees, he did not know that this seemingly ordinary day would turn his life upside down. The warmth of the afternoon sun warmed the air, and André felt soothed, almost carefree, in the gentle routine of his journey. But suddenly, a cry pierced the air, breaking this tranquility. "Help!" The voice was weak, trembling, almost muffled by the effort. It was a desperate call, carried by the wind, and André did not hesitate for a second. He turned his gaze and looked for where the cry was coming from. A few meters in front of him, on the sidewalk, an old man was lying on the pavement. His hands were shaking uncontrollably, and his face, pale as a sheet, was distorted by sharp pain. His lips were slightly parted, and his breathing was short, almost imperceptible. He was suffering a heart attack. André knew what had to be done. His heart sank, but he didn't panic. He rushed towards the man, quickly bending to his side. Without thinking, he placed his hands firmly on the old man's chest, trying to support his breathing. The man's life was at stake, and everything André had learned in his first aid classes came flooding back. He had attended training a few years ago, but it wasn't theoretical, it was real. The man in front of him needed help, and only he could offer him a chance. His heart pounded as he applied cardiac compressions, every movement dictated by the need to save this fragile life. He picked up his phone, calling her calmly despite the panic that threatened to arise. "Emergency, please, a man is having a heart attack. I'm in Rue de Chêne." The seconds seemed to stretch into an eternity. André could hear the frantic beating of his own heart in his ears. Time seemed to stand still around him, as he continued to put pressure on the old man's chest, silently praying that his gesture would be enough. His hands were shaking, but he didn't stop. The old man, growing weaker and weaker, seemed to be fading before his eyes, but he continued to breathe, even if barely. André felt that he must not relax his efforts, not now. He'd seen people die before, but he refused to let this one go without trying. The minutes passed like hours, until the ambulance finally arrived, breaking the heavy silence. The rescuers immediately took over, taking the old man away with impressive speed and efficiency. André remained there, his hands still trembling, his breathing short, his heart beating wildly, but a strange feeling of calm came over him. He had done everything he could. He had saved a life, and that simple fact was enough to fill his chest with pride. But he had no idea what the future held for him. In the days that followed, the town of St. John found itself caught in a whirlwind of conversation. Residents spoke of this heroic rescue, of this black man who had risked his life to save a stranger. Local newspapers devoted articles to the incident, and a video, taken by a passing witness, made the rounds on social media. In this video, André appeared as a determined man, acting quickly and efficiently. The story was going viral. But what no one knew was that the public reception was not going to be what they had hoped for. Far from celebrating his heroic act, part of the community began to ask questions. Some comments on social networks became increasingly bitter. What was he trying to gain by saving this man? Why this scenario? Some questioned his intentions simply because he was black. A black man, really? Wrote an anonymous voice on a local discussion page. Far from applauding him, some questioned his action, looking for hidden motivations, personal gain behind his generosity. Despite the messages of support and thanks coming from many citizens who had seen his act for what it was, the shadow of doubt spread over André. He found himself trapped between the recognition of a small part of the community and the racist judgments of another. But what happened next would change everything. A few days after the rescue, André's life took an unexpected turn. What seemed like a simple gesture of help, without any ulterior motive, turned out to be the start of a much larger path than he had imagined. The old man he had saved, Mr. William Hardy, turned out to be a much more complex and influential character than André had imagined. Mr. Hardy, although frail in appearance, was none other than a retired real estate magnate, a man whose influence extended far beyond the small town of St. John. For decades, he had managed properties in the downtown area and owned a large business complex that made the area famous. He had chosen, however, to lead a discreet existence, far from the spotlight, carefully hiding his identity behind the facades of small properties and old cobbled streets. He had never sought recognition or glory. For him, business was about pragmatism and luck, but deep down he harbored greater ideals. He knew his power could be used for good, and through subtle actions, he founded a foundation to help inner-city youth enter the world of real estate, an industry often closed to those from those backgrounds. However, his foundation was almost unknown, his commitment remained in the shadows, and the help he provided remained anonymous. When he called André, the latter was still in shock from the fallout from the incident. He had never considered that a simple gesture of kindness could have led him to this type of recognition. He remembers the morning when his phone rang, and the surprise he felt when he heard the old man's voice. They found themselves in a quiet cafe, far from the tumult of the media and curious looks. The place was intimate, almost familiar, with walls lined with old books and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Mr. Hardy, with his great presence and his sharp gaze, took his place opposite André. His face marked by the years contrasted with the clarity of his eyes, which, despite age and apparent fragility, exuded an undeniable inner strength. "I wanted to thank you, André," he began in a calm but serious voice. "You saved my life, and you don't know how much that means to me. But there is something you need to understand. What you did was more than just an act of kindness. It's much more than that." André listened, his thoughts mixing between confusion and curiosity. He wasn't used to receiving praise like this, and the situation made him slightly uncomfortable. Mr. Hardy continued, his voice taking on a more personal, almost intimate tone. "Many do not know my past, nor what I have really accomplished. My name is synonymous with success in real estate, but what few know is that I have always had a deep commitment to young people from modest backgrounds. There is a foundation that I created, and it aims to provide opportunities in a sector that is too often a territory reserved for the privileged. But this foundation has been invisible for too many years. I want to put it back on the map, and to do that, I need someone exceptional to lead it. Someone with the vision to understand that real estate should not only be a profit sector, but a lever for equality." André, stunned, swallowed with difficulty. He never imagined that a man like Mr. Hardy would view him this way. Him, a simple deliverman, without great pretensions. But the intensity of the old man's gaze left no room for doubt. He was serious. "I want you to take over the management of my foundation, André. I observed your behavior, your dignity, your work. You have a vision of what could be done for young people like you, for those who are often forgotten. I know you are capable of doing this job. This moment marked a turning point. André, despite his doubts and fears, accepted this proposal. The idea of leaving your day job and taking on such a complex and demanding field seemed unreal. But he understood that this chance did not come twice, and that it was much more than a professional opportunity. It was a chance to transform not only his own life, but the lives of many others. Over the following months, the foundation became his field of action, and André discovered a new identity. He went from an unassuming deliverman to a respected leader in the local real estate industry. But it wasn't just about titles or wealth. André dedicated himself to his mission, providing real and meaningful opportunities to the city's young people, particularly those from working-class neighborhoods. He trained them, advised them, and offered them internships, jobs, and even advice on real estate investment. He had become a symbol of change, a man capable of seeing beyond stereotypes and barriers, and bringing real transformation to society. His story, that of a deliverman who had saved an old man and who had seen his life transformed, inspired the entire city. People began to question their prejudices, and to understand that an individual's true value lies not in their appearance or their origins, but in their ability to act with integrity, to make a difference. And so André, who had become a respected face of real estate and social commitment, understood that his true wealth lay in what he had given to others. Opportunities, hope, and living proof that small actions, even invisible ones, can have an immense impact on people's lives.